Boynton Beach, a small city on the southeastern coast of Florida, is known for its picturesque beaches and tranquil lifestyle. But behind this idyllic facade, as in many other American cities, lie stories of ambition, greed, and betrayal. It was here, in 2009, that a drama unfolded that shocked not only the local community, but the entire country. The story of Michael and Dalia Dippolito became a vivid example of how the pursuit of quick wealth can cloud one's judgment and lead to catastrophic consequences. Michael Dippolito was born on December 18, 1970, in Philadelphia. His childhood was far from ideal. Both parents struggled with drug addiction, so his grandparents raised the boy most of the time. Unfortunately, the negative example set by his parents influenced Michael, and by the age of 15, he ended up in a rehabilitation center due to problems with alcohol and drugs. After 5.5 years of sobriety, Michael relapsed in his early 20s and began dealing drugs. In 1997, at the age of 26, he moved to Florida, hoping for a new life. However, shortly after moving, he was arrested for offering $15 for sexual services to an undercover officer. Despite this incident, Michael tried to turn his life around. He started working as a salesman for a telemarketing company, but quickly realized that this activity was associated with fraud. Instead of abandoning illegal activities, Michael decided to open his own company that engaged in similar schemes. He used the obtained funds for a luxurious lifestyle, spending them on jewelry, hotel rooms, clothes, and even more than $6,000 on phone sex. In 2002, Michael was arrested for illegal telemarketing, fraud, and grand theft. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison and 28 years of probation. After his release in 2005, Michael had to report his every move to a probation officer and pay $220,000 in restitution. Dalia Muhammad was born on October 18, 1982, in New York, but grew up with 2 younger siblings in Boynton Beach, Florida. Her childhood was relatively calm, but everything changed when she turned 18. Dalia's parents divorced due to her father's infidelity, which deeply affected the young woman. At 19, Dalia began working in the escort service industry. She worked in various massage parlors in Florida and California, where she moved for a while with her then-fiancé. Over the next few years, Dalia's life was full of changes. She studied in college, obtained a real estate agent license, got married and divorced, taking with her an expensive $40,000 ring, a new Mercedes, and a significant amount of money. In October 2008, as the sun was setting over the southern Atlantic coast, 38-year-old entrepreneur Michael Dippolito, whose wife was away, decided to order an escort. Just 35 minutes after the call, 26-year-old Dalia Muhammad knocked on his door. This meeting became a turning point in both their lives. Michael was struck by Dalia's beauty, and a spark immediately ignited between them. They spent the evening immersed in friendly conversation that went far beyond ordinary escort services. The next day, Michael contacted Dalia again, and they spent the entire weekend together. Their connection quickly grew into something more than just a business relationship. This unexpected meeting became the beginning of a whirlwind romance that led to dramatic events that forever changed both their lives. Michael, who had recently been released from prison and was trying to start a new life, saw in Dalia a chance for happiness. Dalia, for her part, saw in Michael an opportunity to escape the life of an escort and gain financial stability. The romance between Michael and Dalia developed at lightning speed. Just 2 weeks after their first meeting, Michael was ready to take a decisive step. He divorced his first wife, Maria, with whom he had lived for 7 years. The divorce was finalized on January 28, 2009, and on the same day, Michael bought a townhouse for himself and Dalia. Interestingly, Dalia, who was already working as a real estate agent at the time, was the realtor in this deal, receiving a commission from the sale of the house that Michael bought for them. 5 days after the divorce was finalized on February 2nd, 2009, Michael and Dalia got married in the Palm Beach County Court. Their marriage seemed like a perfect combination of passion and shared interests. They described their relationship as very sexual, loved to relax together, and dreamed of appearing on a reality show. Michael gave Dalia an engagement ring worth $26,000, which indicated his serious intentions and financial capabilities. However, the idyll didn't last long. Just a month after the wedding, the first signs of problems began to appear. Michael and Dalia started discussing the possibility of early termination of Michael's probation. This required paying the remaining restitution of $191,000. Dalia offered to pay $91,000 of this amount, and Michael was to contribute the remaining $100,000. This proposal seemed generous and indicated Dalia's desire to help her husband. However, it was from this moment that financial machinations began, which later led to tragic consequences. In February and March 2009, Michael began transferring money to Dalia in small amounts, $6,000 to $7,000, every few days, sometimes even twice a day. He tried to transfer the full amount of $100,000 in smaller transactions to avoid drawing attention to large transfers. This caution was related to his past and probation conditions. However, it soon became clear that not everything was going according to plan. Dalia informed Michael that she had transferred all the money to the lawyer, but the receipt she provided raised suspicions. It stated that the payment was made from an account in the Cayman Islands and that it had been canceled. This became the first serious signal that something was wrong in their relationship. The financial situation was becoming increasingly complicated. A week after the incident with the receipt, Dalia provided Michael with a bank check for $191,000. However, this check was written in the name of Eric Tao, the husband of Dalia's friend, which raised additional suspicions. When they came to Michael's lawyer to hand over the check, Dalia unexpectedly took it back, demanding that $91,000 be returned to her. Michael, trying to keep the peace, went to his bank safe and retrieved $140,000 in cash. He gave Dalia $91,000 in exchange for the check for the full amount of restitution. However, when Michael brought the check to his lawyer, it turned out that the amount on it had changed from $191,000 to $191. Dalia explained this by saying that during lunch with Eric, he had allegedly switched the checks. Eric agreed to write a new check for $191,000 if Michael gave him $140,000 in cash and paid the remaining $51,000 later. This complex scheme led to Michael's lawyer refusing to take the case, considering the situation too risky. Later, Dalia suggested a new lawyer who advised Michael to transfer the house to her name. On July 31st, 2009, Michael, trusting his wife, signed documents transferring ownership of the house to Dalia. Parallel to the financial machinations, Dalia began implementing a plan to frame Michael. On March 5th, 2009, at 6:40 in the morning, about 10 police officers arrived at the Dippolito couple's house. Michael's probation officer had received 3 anonymous calls from neighbors who claimed that Michael was selling steroids and ecstasy from home. Michael was shocked, as nothing like this had ever happened during his years on probation. The police searched the house but found nothing. 11 days later, on March 16th, the police received another anonymous call. This time, a woman reported that someone was selling drugs from a gray Chevrolet Tahoe in the parking lot of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Manalapan, 6 miles from the Dippolito house. The police checked the car, which belonged to Michael, but again found nothing. 2 weeks later, on March 29th, a special narcotics unit stopped Michael and Dalia at the City Place shopping center in Palm Beach. This time, they found cocaine hidden in a cigarette pack under the spare tire in Michael's car. Michael was stunned and began to cry, claiming that he had been clean for 6 years and had no idea how the drugs ended up in his car. Officer Mary Hopper believed Michael, and he wasn't arrested. Later, it was revealed that it was Dalia who had planted the drugs and made the anonymous calls, trying to frame her husband. On March 17, 2009, Dalia took a step that definitively moved her actions from the category of fraud to that of particularly serious crimes. She contacted her ex-boyfriend, Mohammed Shihadeh. During a meeting the next day, Dalia told Mohammed that Michael was allegedly abusing her and she feared for her life. To gain Mohammed's trust, Dalia gifted him a Range Rover, which she had bought with money intended for Michael's restitution. After this, she made a shocking proposal. She asked Mohammed if he knew anyone who could kill her husband. Mohammed was stunned and refused to participate in this plan. Faced with refusal, Dalia did not give up on her intention. She continued to look for ways to get rid of Michael, including attempts to send him back to prison through planted drugs. According to the investigation, on July 22, 2009, Dalia even tried to poison Michael by adding antifreeze to his tea. Michael immediately spat out the drink due to its unpleasant taste, but for the next 10 days he suffered from mouth ulcers, diarrhea, and severe stomach pains. On July 31, 2009, the same day Michael signed documents transferring the house to Dalia, she met with Mohammed again. This time, she directly asked him to kill Michael. Shocked by such a proposal, Mohammed refused and immediately turned to the Boynton Beach police. The police quickly reacted to this report. They decided to use Mohammed to gather evidence against Dalia. Detectives installed hidden cameras and microphones in Mohammed's car and asked him to arrange another meeting with Dalia. The next day, this meeting took place and was fully recorded. Dalia told Mohammed that she couldn't divorce Michael because he had connections to organized crime, and if she filed for divorce, they would come after her. She gave Mohammed $1,200 to purchase a weapon, a clear photograph of Michael, and a plan of their house. The police now had enough evidence to act. They decided to continue the operation to obtain even more irrefutable evidence. Detectives prepared Sergeant Whitty Jean to play the role of a hired killer. The plan was to arrange a meeting between Dalia and the killer and record their entire conversation. On August 3, 2009, in the CVS parking lot in Boynton Beach, a meeting took place between Dalia and the killer Sergeant Whitty Jean, who was acting undercover. The entire conversation was recorded on a hidden camera installed in the car. During this meeting, Dalia discussed in detail her plan to kill Michael. She insisted that the crime be committed as soon as possible, preferably on Wednesday morning. Sergeant John suggested staging a robbery gone wrong, to which Dalia agreed. Dalia provided information about Michael's daily routine, noting that he usually walks the dog at 6:30 in the morning and leaves the doors open. She promised to be at the gym at the time of the murder to provide herself with an alibi. The most shocking moment of the conversation was when Sergeant Jean asked Dalia if she was sure about her decision. Dalia replied that she was 5,000% sure and that her decision was final. This phrase later became key evidence against her in court. August 5, 2009, the day planned for the murder, started early. At 5:30 in the morning, Dalia informed Michael that she was going to the gym unusually early for her, which surprised Michael, but he didn't pay much attention to it. The police monitored Dalia to make sure she actually went to the gym. This was important for their plan, and as evidence of her involvement in the crime being prepared. Meanwhile, detectives arrived at the Dippolito house and informed Michael about the situation. He was quickly evacuated and taken to the police station. The police staged a crime scene, cordoning off the house with yellow tape and turning on the sirens of patrol cars. Cameras from the TV show Cops, which was being filmed with the Boynton Beach police at the time, were also on site to record the events. At 6:40 in the morning, Detective Sergeant Frank Ramsey called Dalia and informed her that an emergency had occurred at her house and she needed to return home immediately. When Dalia arrived, Sergeant Ramsey told her that her husband Michael had been killed. Dalia's reaction to this news was a key moment for the investigation. She began to cry and seemed shocked, but the detectives who had experience with similar situations noticed that her reaction seemed unnatural. They noted that although Dalia was crying, there were no tears on her face. Dalia was taken to the police station for questioning. Detectives began asking her about possible suspects in her husband's murder. Dalia talked about Michael's criminal past, his probation for stock fraud, and the difficulties he faced trying to pay restitution. She insisted that their marriage was happy and without problems. During the interrogation, Dalia named several potential suspects, including Michael's former business partner, who actually had nothing to do with the case. She detailed Michael's financial difficulties and people from his past who might wish him harm. After a lengthy interrogation, the detectives decided to move to the decisive stage. They brought Sergeant Whitty Jean, handcuffed, into the interrogation room and asked Dalia if she knew this person. Dalia strongly denied ever seeing him before. Then the detectives revealed the truth: Michael was alive, and the man she had hired for the murder was actually an undercover police officer. They informed Dalia that they had video and audio recordings of all her conversations regarding the murder planning. Despite the presented evidence, Dalia continued to deny her involvement in the conspiracy. She insisted on her innocence even after being shown video recordings of her conversations with the killer. This unwavering position surprised the detectives, who had never before encountered such a level of denial in the face of obvious evidence. Dalia was arrested on charges of solicitation of first-degree murder. During the arrest, she continued to insist on her innocence, repeating, "I didn't do anything," even as they put handcuffs on her. After the arrest, the police allowed Michael to see Dalia. When he entered the room where she was, Dalia began begging him to come closer, repeating that it was all untrue. Michael refused to approach, stating that he couldn't help her get out of this situation. While in county jail, Dalia called Michael. During this conversation, she continued to deny her involvement in the conspiracy, even when Michael told her he had seen and heard all the evidence. Michael offered to help her if she would sign the house back over to him, but Dalia refused. This phone conversation became another piece of evidence of Dalia's unusual behavior. Even in the face of irrefutable evidence and her husband's confession that he had seen the video recordings, she continued to insist on her version of events. The trial of Dalia Dippolito began on April 25, 2011 in Palm Beach County Court. The prosecution presented substantial evidence, including video recordings of Dalia's conversations with the undercover killer and her reaction to the staged murder of her husband. Dalia's defense chose an unexpected strategy. They claimed that the entire situation was a setup organized by Michael Dippolito to gain fame and get on a reality show. According to the lawyers, Dalia was a victim of her husband's manipulations and the Boynton Beach police's greed for fame. Michael Dippolito testified for 3 days. He strongly denied any involvement in the setup and emphasized that he would never risk his life or money for a reality show. His testimony significantly undermined the defense's position. On May 13, 2011, after 3 hours of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. Dalia Dippolito was found guilty of solicitation of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 20 years in prison. At the sentencing hearing, Michael made an emotional statement. He expressed his disappointment that Dalia and her lawyers continued to deny the obvious, and noted that it would have been better if they had said that aliens landed and did this, as it would have been a better defense. Despite the verdict, Dalia Dippolito's legal saga was far from over. On July 30th, 2014, she was granted the right to a new trial. The reason was that one of the jurors from the first trial had learned about Dalia's attempt to poison Michael with antifreeze information that was deemed inadmissible in court. The second trial began in December 2016. This time, Dalia's defense changed their strategy, claiming that the police had provoked her into committing the crime. They tried to present Dalia as a victim of police entrapment. However, this argument did not convince the jury, and the trial ended without a verdict due to a hung jury. The third and final trial began on June 8, 2017. The prosecution again presented substantial evidence, including video recordings and witness testimonies. The defense continued to insist that Dalia was a victim of police provocation. On June 16, 2017, the jury once again found Dalia guilty of solicitation of first-degree murder. This time, the sentence was 16 years in prison. The judge upheld the previous verdict, but credited 4 years that Dalia had spent under house arrest while awaiting new trials. After the third trial, which ended on June 16, 2017, Dalia Dippolito was sentenced to 16 years in prison. The judge, in passing the sentence, took several factors into account. He noted that Dalia had shown no remorse for her actions and continued to deny her guilt, even in the face of irrefutable evidence. The judge also emphasized that Dalia's actions were motivated by greed and selfishness. He noted that there were no mitigating circumstances, such as domestic violence or a difficult childhood, that could explain her behavior. Instead, all her actions were aimed at obtaining financial gain and a luxurious lifestyle. Dalia and her lawyers continued to fight even after the sentencing. They filed an appeal to the Florida Supreme Court, but in September 2019, the court rejected their request for a review of the case without comment. In February 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court also refused to hear Dalia's case. According to the sentence, Dalia is to be released on August 24, 2032. She will be 50 years old at the time of release. After the conclusion of the trials, Michael Dippolito tried to return to normal life. Despite all the difficulties he faced, Michael was able to rebuild his life and business. On June 5, 2018, Michael finally paid off the entire restitution amount, and his probation officially ended. This became an important milestone in his life, as he could now completely leave his past behind. Michael founded his own real estate company called Atlantic Florida Properties. His business began to develop successfully, allowing him to regain financial stability. In 2017, Michael became engaged to a woman named Gloria. They bought a house together in Boynton Beach, symbolizing a new beginning in his personal life. In one interview, Michael admitted that it was hard for him to believe that, after everything he had been through, something good was finally happening to him. Michael also became an active advocate for criminal justice reform, using his experience to draw attention to the problems faced by people after release from prison. Dalia Dippolito is serving her sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution in Gainesville, Florida. According to her lawyers, she is trying to use her time in prison for self-improvement and rehabilitation. According to reports, Dalia has become an active participant in religious programs in prison. She leads a Bible study group, which, according to her lawyers, has earned her respect among other inmates. This activity is seen as Dalia's attempt to find meaning and purpose in her current situation. During her time under house arrest, while awaiting retrials, Dalia gave birth to a son. The child now lives with his grandmother, Dalia's mother. Separation from her son is the hardest aspect of her imprisonment for Dalia. She regularly receives visits from her son, which helps her maintain a connection with her family. Dalia's lawyers continue to insist on her innocence and are working on the possibility of filing a new appeal. They claim that new evidence could change the course of the case, although details of this potential evidence are not disclosed. The case of Dalia Dippolito became a vivid example of how fleeting passion and greed for money can lead to catastrophic consequences. This story attracted attention across the country, becoming the subject of numerous documentaries, television programs, and books. For law enforcement, this case became an example of a successful undercover operation. However, it also sparked discussions about the ethics and legality of such police methods. Critics argued that the police might have provoked Dalia into committing the crime, although the court ultimately rejected these arguments. For Michael Dippolito, this story became a journey from victim to advocate for reforms in the justice system. His experience highlighted the problems faced by former inmates trying to return to normal life. The Dalia Dippolito case also raised important questions about the role of media in covering criminal cases. The presence of cops' reality show cameras during the staged murder added an element of spectacle to a serious criminal investigation. Ultimately, this story remains a cautionary tale about the dangers of excessive ambition and greed. It demonstrates how quick decisions and unethical actions can forever change the life not only of the perpetrator, but also of everyone around them. As of 2024, Dalia Dippolito continues to serve her sentence, and her story remains a subject of discussion and analysis in legal and social circles.